Thank you for joining me for Lions HR's presentation of I'm a Supervisor, Now What? This training is specifically designed to give new or newer supervisors and managers direction and confidence as they move into their areas of responsibility. And let's face it, leadership can be a daunting task. It's even more nerve-wracking if you're unsure about what you're doing. After today's session, you will be equipped with the basics, mentally, organizationally, and practically to get you started on a healthy and professional direction as you enter into your supervisory and managerial career. Now, some of you have already received training in leadership, and others have been appointed to your position because you were good at doing something else. Isn't that something? You were a good welder, so they made you a supervisor. You have great sales skills, so they made you a manager. And that's all right. Your business has partnered with Lions HR, and we are here to help you realize the potential that your company saw in you. The first step is to recognize that there are things to learn, things that you absolutely can learn to equip you as a leader to be consistent, fair, and to act legally. Now, you may be wondering what my goal is in all of this training. My goal is to give you a healthy mindset towards supervision, give you the appropriate focus so that your energy is well used, and finally, to give you some practical ideas about what you can do right away to give you an advantage as you begin to supervise at your business. When you transition from being a worker to being a supervisor, you have to change your mindset. You're no longer expected to actually do the task all the time. You are expected to ensure that the task gets done. It's sometimes referred to as dividing and multiplying. That's where you take a number of workers and by investing yourself in them, you make the team much more effective than any one person could be by themselves. You're good at your job, and you may have been promoted solely on your ability to do your job, and that's a great thing. You should be proud of yourself. But as a supervisor, you're going to be expected to lead a team. And as I said before, a team can do far more together than you can do by yourself. Now, at some point, you're going to be tempted to step in on behalf of a worker or workers that are going slower than you, may not be as skilled as you, and are not as well trained as you. Resist the urge to do that. Resist the urge to step up and say, move, let me get this. What your job is as a supervisor is to develop your workers so that they are not only as good as you, but better. That's what will define success for you as a supervisor. You take a group of average people and turn them into a highly effective team. Now, I don't need to tell you how to do this, do I? I mean, you already know it. If you wanted to train something on how to do something, what would you do? You would train them. You would step up and show them how to do the task. For example, let's say you wanted to teach somebody how to cast a lure using a fishing rod. What would you do? Well, you'd get the fishing rod that they were going to use, make sure it had line and a lure, and you'd go to a pond where they were going to actually do the casting, right? And then you would step up and demonstrate how it is to properly cast the lure into the pond. You would show them step by step and tell them the sequence of things that they needed to do. Then, obviously, you would hand the fishing rod over to the person that was learning and let them try. And chances are the first couple of times they wouldn't get it exactly right. Maybe they would, but most likely they'd make a couple of mistakes. But pretty soon, with your guidance, they would get it. They'd understand how to cast. At that point, you would step back and let them fish. That's the process of training. We show the person how to do the task. We give them information about it. We demonstrate the task. We have them do the task while being closely supervised, and then we back off and let them do the work. Now, chances are from time to time we may give them a pointer here and there, but other than that, we let them shine. We let them develop in their job. That's what being a supervisor is all about. Now, can you do that with a handout? Can you do that by just having them sign off that they attended a 30-minute training? No. You could sign all the papers you ever wanted to, but that person wouldn't know how to cast, would they? So we need to make sure that our training as a supervisor is first and foremost as a priority, that we make sure that our people know how to do their jobs. So your mindset is develop people. Now, what's our primary responsibility? You may think that the primary responsibility of any supervisor is to get the job done. I mean, it makes sense, right? You're a supervisor, you work for a company, the company puts you there to make sure the job gets done. Well, actually, that's what your workers are doing. They're getting the job done. So what's your responsibility? Well, your primary task is to remove any barriers to your workers getting things done. Your job is to provide them with what they need: encouragement, enthusiasm, motivation. You provide them with the tools that they need, the supplies, a schedule, a direction, instructions, training. Those are the things that I'm talking about. Do you see the shift? You're going from being one of the people that does things at work to being a person that ensures that they get done. You enable people to get things done, and they need you for that. That is a real thing. I've seen some supervisors jump in and I ask them, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, I feel guilty. I feel like I got to be doing something." Now look, I can understand a work ethic, and that's great, but we have to resist the urge to just jump in and start working a position, because remember that concept of dividing and multiplying. We want to develop people so that they can do the job, so that they are self-sufficient. That's what being an effective supervisor is all about. One of the things that I've seen that tends to derail new supervisors and managers is being overly familiar with their employees, being buddies, being pals, being one of the gang. You have to understand, when you accept a position of leadership where people are accountable to you and you're accountable to them, that we can't be overly familiar. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is any relationship that gets in the way of you praising somebody or redirecting them if they get some off-course behavior, any kind of relationship that interferes with that is not healthy, is not professional. Also, let's say that you are able to maintain that kind of relationship, but your other team members see you go out with one or two team members consistently, but you never go out with them. Well, they're going to start assuming that there is favoritism there, and it's very difficult to defend against something like that if the accusation is brought up. So the way to combat that is to recognize you are people bound by a paycheck. You're people bound by a paycheck. You're not buddies, friends. You are a supervisor, and they are employees. And we have to look at it from a professional standpoint. You're not one of them anymore. And you know what? That's a normal thing. Think about it. Let's say you worked at another job and you had a good friend while you were at that other job. Are they still as close right now that you're working somewhere else? Well, probably not, because of proximity and because you're doing different things now. And that's normal. You're people bound by a paycheck. So do not become overly familiar with your employees. Where does your authority come from? Well, initially, it's delegated to you. You don't have any leadership credibility in the eyes of your coworkers yet. You have authority. You do not yet have credibility. Even if you were really good at your job before, you were the number one welder, you were the number one salesperson, now, as a leader, you're a newbie. However, you've been put in a position of leadership. This is an important time for you and your leadership, because Now you are going to be watched very closely. The first few actions and ongoing actions are very influential in establishing how your employees are going to view you. As you make decisions that are consistent, fair, and legal, you're going to build trust, and that starts right away. Each decision you make is like a deposit in a bank. It builds gradually until there's really something of value there. Another way to look at it is that it's like a foundation made of bricks. Every good decision, every consistent treatment of employees, every time you do not walk past a problem, but you handle it on the spot, that adds another brick to that foundation. And that foundation is trust. When your employees trust you and you have that foundation of consistency, of good behavior, of being safe, fair, and legal all the time as a supervisor, you start to see things built upon it like loyalty, productivity, efficiency, enthusiasm, all those kinds of great motivating things that are advantageous to have on a team. Well, if you've been listening, you're going to be able to answer this question. For whom do I work? Now, a person that didn't listen to this training and was new to it might say, well, I work for the company and the employees work for me. And I could understand that. Okay, I could understand where that opinion came from. But as you've seen now from what we've covered, what's the real answer to this question? Who do you work for? Is it your boss? Well, yeah, of course, you work for your boss. But every day, who directs your activities? Who do you serve? It's your employees. By serving your employees, you provide them with what they need to be an effective and productive team. And that's exactly what you're there to do. You provide them with purpose, direction, and motivation. And that is the definition of leadership. Have you worked for a great servant leader before? You knew that they would jump in to help, but they maintained that leadership position. They do anything for you to help. They pushed you. They expected the best of you, and they may have even lit you up a couple of times when you messed up. But you took it because you knew that they had your best in mind. That's what you want to strive for. You could just show up and boss people around, but I hope that you'll take this opportunity to make it a transformational time, not only for you, but for your employees. Now we move on to focus. As a child, I was always intrigued by, taking that magnifying glass outside on a sunny day and focusing the light and, being able to burn a leaf or a blade of grass or something like that. It was just so amazing to me that right out there, you could harness the power of the sun. That's focus. It's taking all the potential energy and directing it to one particular goal or area. And in order to do that, you have to know where you're aiming. That means you have to be clear on what's expected of your team. I suggest that you examine your job description first. See what your company has said, what they've written down they want you to accomplish. Look at the annual, short-term, and long-term goals of the company. Take notes at the staff meetings. Your team has a lot of potential to contribute to your company, and your job is to focus that energy into the right things. There's an old adage that says, if you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time, and that is very, very true. Make sure that your employees know how what they do fits in with the bigger picture of what your company does. That gives purpose, that gives direction, that gives motivation, that gives a reason for them to be innovative, and it lets them know the direction that you need to go. Have you ever set out to clean your house? I mean, you said one Saturday, I'm going to clean the whole house. Saturday comes along, and you think, I got to clean this whole house. And you start in, and it doesn't happen because that was just too much. That was too big a project to take on in just one day. But alternatively, you may have said, you know what? This Saturday morning, I'm going to clean the bathroom. And I'll bet you that happened. I'll bet you that happened. Better yet, if you have some family members around, you could say, hey, Bill, would you please clean the living room? Jane, would you please clean the kitchen? And I'm going to clean the bathroom. And at noontime, you look around, it's all done. Why? You divided and you multiplied. You had 3 people, you had 1 goal, and you got it done. Your team needs to know what they're aiming at. Make sure that it's very clear in their minds what they're doing and why. Next important point is to talk the talk. And one of the best ways to build a good reputation and be effective as a supervisor is to learn the business and educate your employees on it too. You're there to support the direction of your company, and your employees need to hear your support consistently. You may disagree from time to time with what your company is doing, but you only voice those disagreements in private with decision makers. Once a decision has been made, you publicly support your company's direction. Never, ever vent to your employees. You don't have a gripe session with your employees. That is not professional. It is unacceptable. I hope you hear what I just said now. You don't want to be a yes man or a yes woman, okay? That's not what I'm saying. You're not to be compliant all the time. But if you do have a concern, you take it through the right channels, and that is not griping to your employees. Okay, that's going to a decision maker, being tactful, discussing it in private, and then fully supporting the decision outside of that office. Another mistake I've seen supervisors make that you can avoid is when you make a mistake. If you do make a mistake, own it. Own your mistake. Fess up to it. I did this. It was not my intention to do something wrong, but I did this. It was me. Now here's what I'm going to do to fix it. I'll tell you what, your higher-ups will be so refreshed that somebody actually steps up and takes responsibility for their actions. It's really easy to pass the buck. It's really easy to try to spread blame. But it shows astute leadership for a person to say, no, that's me. I did this. I had the best of intentions. It went wrong, but I'll fix it. That is very refreshing, and it will do well for you in your career. Take responsibility. Next, you have to walk the walk. As a supervisor, you set the example, and that's in everything. You represent the best you can expect from your employees in communication, being on time, attitude, professional appearance, job knowledge, commitment, and enthusiasm. Remember that. You are the one that your employees will look towards for their example. If you're late, you can't ask them to be on time. If you have a poor attitude towards work, they will too. But if you have a great attitude and are enthusiastic, that will rub off on your team. Unfortunately, it will not rub off as quick as a negative attitude, but I'll tell you what, your enthusiasm will rub off on your team. No doubt you've seen that before. An upbeat supervisor really is a lot more fun to work for than one that is glum and moody. A note on that here, please be consistent. Your mood has to be stable if your employees are going to build trust in you. You cannot be up one day and bite their heads off the next. Leave your personal stuff at home. Being professional is a choice. Being moody is a choice. Please choose to be professional. That means you're polite and pleasant every day. Your employees should not be able to tell you if you have an outstanding bill, a wayward child, or anything else. We all have stuff. I have stuff. You have stuff. We all have stuff. But we can choose to be professional. Let's review some of the essentials. Be honest. Be honest with your employees. Tell them when they do well. Privately redirect them when they get off course. Communicate with them often about the goals and objectives of the company. Share your vision with them so that they know what they're aiming for. Commit yourself to learn. Learn everything you can about your craft. Learn about leadership, supervision. Learn your employees' jobs. Learn about your company's direction. Always learn. I'm almost 50 years old. I'm still in college. Always learning. Remember to own your mistakes. Get between your team and criticism and deflect praise to them. Provide motivation for your team by being consistently professional, recognizing good work, and keeping them informed. Remember that you're not one of them anymore. You are people bound by a paycheck. You are on the bottom line. If your team becomes the focus of criticism, you step up and take it. If your team accomplishes something and gets recognized for it in a positive light, you step aside and let your team members receive the recognition. That's what being a leader is about. Remember that no one is irreplaceable. Don't feel like you're being held hostage by one employee just because they do their job particularly well, but in every other aspect, they're just awful to have around. No one is irreplaceable. Much of the stress that we put on ourselves as leaders is self-imposed. Get that. Much of the stress is self-imposed. That means if you follow these guidelines, you can reduce a lot of the stress. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. There's going to be some times where it doesn't feel good. Like, for example, one of the things that I feel uncomfortable in doing is confronting somebody that needs to be redirected. They have off-course behavior, and I have to correct them. Why? I'm one of these relational people. I'm kind of a mercy-driven person. I just enjoy being liked and that sort of thing. Does that mean that I will not confront somebody? Absolutely not. I will confront somebody. However, I won't like it. I won't like it. But that's what we have to do as leaders from time to time. When I was in the military, it was explained to me that bravery is being scared, but doing it anyways. Being scared, but doing it anyways. A lot of people think bravery is the absence of fear. No. You can be afraid, but you're still doing what you need to do. So as a supervisor, you can't walk past problems. And make sure that you document everything. And that means not only things that people have done wrong, but that means documenting things they've done right. Man, what kind of a supervisor would you be if you kept track of all the good things and all the bad things that your employees did? I'm not talking about every last thing, but I'm talking about, let's say a person gets called in on their day off. You jot something down on a slip of paper and you throw it in their file. Forget about it. Let's say they mess up. You do a counseling. Of course, you put that in their file. And then 5 more times during the year, that person comes in when asked to fill in for somebody that laid out of work. And it comes time for them to have their evaluation. And you look in their file and say, oh man, look at this. Back in February, in March, in July, in August, and in November, you came in to fill in for somebody that laid out. Now, you did have this one incident back here in March where you were late, and I had to write you up for that. But my goodness, this looks like a really good year. Do you see how that evaluation would be appreciated far more than just having that one counseling statement in their file to make a decision about? So let's keep track and document everything. So what's next? Learn, learn, learn. You need to be looking at your job description, find out what your company is about and how you and your team fit into it so that you can explain to your team why it is that you do what you do. Ask questions. Ask questions. Ask questions of people that are successful in your company, of successful leaders, and ask why they are successful. Dare to challenge the status quo. I'm not saying to challenge the way that you do things. I'm saying don't take normal as for granted. Dare to look to do extraordinary things. Dare to set a higher standard. Bring energy and enthusiasm to the job because you represent the best you can expect from your employees. And make sure to tell people when they're doing a good job. That it doesn't take much. Hey, Bill, appreciate the hustle today. You really did a good job, and I appreciate it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. It's kind of like salt, you know. Too little, and the workplace is bland. Too much, distasteful. But just the right amount of salt, it's just Just right. Perfect. And then redirection. Make sure you do it in private. Make sure you explain what the person did wrong and then what you expect them to do. That's really what your employees are looking for. Don't call them out. Don't yell at them. Don't embarrass them, because that's never going to be very productive. Finally, you see here a picture of a notepad and a pencil, and the best piece of advice I could give you, especially starting out, is to carry a little memo pad with you and a pen. And the reason for that is because one of the downfalls of new supervisors and managers is they forget to do things. And especially early on, you don't know these things very well. And it's important, especially if you promise an employee that you're going to do something, or if you promise a supervisor that you're going to do something. Make sure that you write it down, follow up, and check it off when it's done. And go back. You have one place to go back to check if you've done everything that you need to do. And I'll tell you what, you want to know the benefit of that? Peace of mind. You write it down and you don't have to worry. We've all had the experience of going to the grocery store when we were hungry and we bought $300 worth of groceries when really all we needed was milk and bread, right? If we have a list, we stay on target, and it's the same thing. Have a memo pad with you and write things down. Expect that you're going to make occasional mistakes. Own it, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and move on, and you're going to do great as a supervisor. Keep open communication with your people. Value your people. Look at them as contributing members that you are seeking to develop into just wonderful workers, and I think you're going to really enjoy your new experiences as a supervisor or a manager. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.